Stop. You haven't subscribed to the channel yet? Subscribe now. We have new stories every day. Now, let's go. A tangled web in suburbia. I have been married to Emily for 10 years. Our daughter, Sophie, had just started first grade, and life in our little corner of suburban America seemed idyllic. We had a cozy house with a white picket fence, 2 cars in the garage, and a mischievous golden retriever named Max. Everything was picture perfect, or so I thought. One morning over breakfast, Emily looked up from her coffee. She began cautiously. I think it's time I went back to work. I nearly choked on my toast. Back to work. Where did this come from? She shrugged, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. Sophie's in school all day now. I need something more to do. Well, the PTA is always looking for volunteers, I suggested. She rolled her eyes playfully. I'm serious. I want to contribute financially too. I nodded slowly. All right, I understand. Actually, I think Mark is looking for an office manager at his firm. I could talk to him for you. Mark was my best friend since college, a successful entrepreneur who had built his own marketing company from the ground up. Her eyes lit up. You do that? That would be amazing. Of course, I smiled. Anything for you. A week later, Emily started working at Mark's company. Almost overnight, she transformed. She began dressing in stylish outfits, spent more time on her makeup, and even started wearing perfume again, the expensive kind I thought she had given up. One evening, as she was getting ready for work, I leaned against the bedroom door frame. You look different, I remarked. She glanced at me through the mirror, applying a final touch of lipstick. In a good way, I hope. Definitely. It's just new. She laughed lightly. Well, a girl likes to feel confident at work. Fair enough, I chuckled. Knock 'em dead. As weeks turned into months, Emily became more engrossed in her job. She often stayed late, citing meetings or urgent projects. Mark sure is keeping you busy, I commented one night as she walked in well past dinner time. She sighed, kicking off her heels. Tell me about it. And for what he's paying me, it's hardly worth it. I looked up from the TV. Really? I thought he was pretty generous. She scoffed. You'd think so, but not for the amount of work I'm doing. Maybe you should talk to him about a raise, I suggested. Maybe, she mumbled, heading upstairs without another word. Something fell off. Emily was secretive about her work. Her phone was always on silent, and she guarded it like a hawk. One Saturday morning, I noticed a gym bag by the door. Going somewhere? She flashed a bright smile. Yep, I've joined a new fitness club. Time to get back in shape. I raised an eyebrow. You look great to me. Always the charmer, she winked. But this is for me. All right then, have fun sweating. She laughed. Oh, I will. Weeks later, she announced over dinner, I've decided to get a breast augmentation. I dropped my fork. I'm sorry, what? I've booked the surgery for next month, she said casually as if discussing the weather. Emily, where is this coming from? I thought you were happy with yourself. It's just something I've been considering, she replied, taking a sip of water. Is this about me? Because you know I love you just the way you are. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I know. It's not about you. It's about me wanting to feel better about myself. I nodded slowly, though unease gnawed at me. If you're sure, I am, she said firmly. As time went on, Emily grew more distant. One afternoon, my phone rang. It was Laura, Mark's wife. Hey, Laura. What's up? I greeted cheerfully. There was a pause, and then a shaky voice responded. Can we meet? I need to talk to you about something important. Concerned, I agreed. Of course. How about the cafe on Elm Street in an hour? See you then, she whispered. At the cafe, Laura looked distraught. Her eyes were red, and she fiddled nervously with her wedding ring. Laura, you okay? I asked gently. She took a deep breath. I don't know how to say this, so I'll just come out with it. I think Mark is having an affair. My heart skipped a beat. What? Are you sure? She nodded, tears welling up. I've seen the signs, late nights, secretive phone calls. And then I found this. She slid a crumpled receipt across the table. A charge for an expensive dinner for two on a night he was supposedly working late. I tried to process the information. I'm so sorry, but why are you telling me this? She looked down. Because I think it's with Emily. A cold chill ran down my spine. That's impossible. Is it? She challenged softly. They've been spending a lot of time together. They work together, I countered, though doubt crept in. She reached into her bag and pulled out a photo. It showed Mark and Emily walking arm in arm into a hotel. I hired a private investigator, she admitted. I stared at the photo, disbelief turning into anger. I can't believe this. I'm so sorry, she sobbed. I clenched my fists under the table. Thank you for telling me. That evening, I waited for Emily to come home. When she walked through the door, I stood up. We need to talk. She glanced at me warily. Sure. What's up? I held up the photo. Care to explain this? Her face paled. Where did you get that? So it's true, I said quietly. She sank onto the couch. I was going to tell you. When? After you ran off with him? It's complicated, she whispered. I laughed bitterly. Oh, I'm sure it is. How long has this been going on? She looked away. About a year. A year. I shouted. You've been lying to me for a year? Please, keep your voice down, she pleaded. Why should I? You've betrayed me, our family. She stood up, her eyes flashing. Don't act like you're perfect. You've been so consumed with your own life that you didn't even notice I was unhappy. Unhappy? You never said anything. I shouldn't have had to, she snapped. You should have seen it. I threw up my hands. This is unbelievable. You're blaming me for your affair. She crossed her arms defensively. Maybe if you paid more attention. Stop, I interrupted. Just stop. I can't listen to this. There was a heavy silence. What happens now? I finally asked. She sighed. I think we should separate. Fine, I said coldly. I'll pack my things. As I turned to leave, she called out, I'm sorry. I paused at the doorway. So am I. Over the next few days, I moved into a friend's place. The betrayal cut deep, but I wasn't going to let it consume me. I began to think about how to handle the situation. One evening, while scrolling through emails, I stumbled upon some documents Mark had sent me months ago, financial reports for his company. As I looked closer, I noticed discrepancies, illegal ones. A plan formed in my mind. The next day, I made an anonymous call to the IRS. I'd like to report some financial irregularities at a company, I said, providing them with the necessary details. It wasn't long before Mark's company was under investigation. News spread quickly, and soon, he was facing charges for tax evasion and fraud. Meanwhile, Emily served me with divorce papers demanding the house, full custody of Sophie, and an exorbitant amount of spousal support. In court, her lawyer painted me as an absent, neglectful husband. Emily put on a convincing act, tears and all. When it was my turn, I remained composed. Your Honor, I have evidence that my wife has been unfaithful for over a year. I presented the photos and messages between her and Mark. The courtroom murmured. Emily's lawyer stammered, objection. This is irrelevant. The judge overruled. I'll allow it. In the end, the judge saw through her deception. I was granted joint custody of Sophie, kept the house, and was not required to pay spousal support. Outside the courtroom, Emily approached me. You think you've won, but this isn't over. I looked at her sadly. It didn't have to be this way. She scoffed. You always were naive. As she walked away, I felt a mixture of relief and sorrow. Life as a single dad wasn't easy, but Sophie was my anchor. However, I could tell she was struggling. One afternoon while we were at the park, she asked, Daddy, why doesn't Mommy live with us anymore? I took a deep breath. Well, sweetheart, sometimes adults have problems they can't fix. Is it because you were mean to her? Who told you that? I asked gently. Mommy said you made her leave. I sighed. Your mom and I both made mistakes, but we both love you very much. She seemed to ponder this. Will we ever be a family again? I hugged her tightly. We'll always be a family, just a different kind. Over time, I heard bits and pieces about Emily and Mark. His company collapsed under the weight of the legal issues, and they both struggled financially. One day, my friend Jake mentioned, "Hey, did you hear about Mark and Emily?" I shook my head. No, what now? They're heading to China for some exhibition or something. China? That's random. He shrugged. Guess they're trying to start fresh. Good luck to them, I said sarcastically. Months passed and life settled into a new normal. One evening, I received a call from Laura. Hey, she said hesitantly. Laura, hi. How are you? I'm better. It's been rough, but I'm moving on. Glad to hear it. Listen, I was wondering if you'd like to grab coffee sometime. As friends. I smiled. I'd like that. We met at the same cafe where she had first told me about the affair. This time, the mood was lighter. You look good, I commented. Thanks, she blushed. So do you. We chatted about everything and nothing. It felt natural, easy. At one point, she laughed. Remember when we all went camping and Mark forgot the tent poles? I chuckled. How could I forget? We ended up sleeping under the stars and a swarm of mosquitoes. She smiled wistfully. Those were good times. Yeah, I agreed. They were. As we left the cafe, she hesitated. You know, it's nice to have someone who understands. I nodded. I feel the same way. We started spending more time together, dinners, outings with Sophie, even attending her school events. Sophie adored Laura, and the feeling was mutual. One afternoon, Sophie asked, Dad, is Miss Laura your girlfriend? I nearly spilled my coffee. Why do you ask that? She grinned mischievously. Because you smile a lot when she's around. I laughed. Well, she makes me happy. Then you should marry her, she declared. I shook my head, amused. One step at a time, kiddo. As the years went by, Emily occasionally reached out, usually to discuss Sophie. She never apologized for what happened, but I had made peace with it. One day, I received an email from her. I'm back in town. Can we meet? Curious, I agreed. We met at a quiet cafe. She looked older, worn. How have you been? I asked politely. I've had better days, she admitted. China didn't work out. I'm sorry to hear that. She fiddled with her cup. I wanted to talk about Sophie. Is everything okay? I was hoping you'd consider letting her stay with me more often. I raised an eyebrow. Why now? I miss her, and I need her. I sighed. Emily, you can't just waltz back into her life when it's convenient. I'm her mother, she snapped. And I'm her father. We've built a stable life here. She looked away. I make mistakes. I know that. That's an understatement, I muttered. She reached across the table. Please, I'm trying to make things right. I considered her plea. I'll think about it, but Sophie's well-being comes first. Thank you, she whispered. As I left, I felt a strange sense of closure. The wounds had healed, and I was ready to fully embrace my new life. That evening, Laura and I took Sophie to the amusement park. As we rode the Ferris wheel, the city lights sparkling below, I realized how fortunate I was. Dad, this is the best day ever, Sophie exclaimed. Laura smiled at me. She's right, you know. I took their hands. I couldn't agree more. Life had thrown me a curveball, but in the end, it led me to a place of genuine happiness. One night, as Laura and I sat on the porch watching the stars, she rested her head on my shoulder. Do you ever think about the past? She asked. Sometimes, I admitted, but mostly, I'm grateful for where it led me. She squeezed my hand. Me too. Just then, Max bounded over, dropping the sloppery tennis ball at our feet. I laughed. Some things never change. Like your dog's obsession with fetch, she giggled. As we played with Max under the starlit sky, I felt a profound sense of contentment. Here's to new beginnings, I said softly. To new beginnings, she echoed. In the tangled web of lies and betrayal, I found truth and love in the most unexpected place. And for that, I was eternally grateful.